The creation of preparations is exceedingly easy. All that is required is the description of the preparation and of the ingredients with their corresponding percentages. To be able to find your preparations in the system later, you need an identification number, which you can either assign by yourself or which can be determined by the system. Unless you assign the number by yourself, the F6 or Shift F6 keys are used, where the only difference is that F6 increments the highest number already in use by 1, while Shift F6 searches for a free number in the range that has already been used. First, a description has to be entered. Complete the entry by pressing either Enter or Tab.
Preparations are mixtures of different substances, whereby these ingredients can either be raw materials or preparations themselves. They are usually called precursors or intermediates. It is not possible for a formulation to become too complex. A formulation can therefore contain any number of ingredients and is not limited in terms of the number of precursor stages. Formulation ingredients can be entered in a variety of ways. The most common mode of substance search is certainly via the description. If you enter a description or part of a description, then all substances are displayed that begin alphabetically with this description part, but leading characters which are usually not used for the alphabetic order are ignored. In the column for percentages, the percentage can be entered in a variety of ways. Value ranges are allowed: greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, and approximately can be used. ChemGes can also convert from the entered weight value to the percentage. Since the characters greater equal or less equal are not available on any keyboard, simply enter these characters by first typing greater than or less than and then the equal character. The program then combines them automatically. If range values are used, then these are used for all calculations, for example classifications, determination of physical values such as density, as well as TOX or VOC values, whereby the most extreme value is always used for the calculation of hazards. You can also search within descriptions. To do this, simply enter several description parts separated by a space, or press F10 if you only want to search for a single description part. The options for the percentage input change dynamically, depending on previous inputs. Here you can see, for example, that you can now also output the remainder to 100%. Of course, there are various options to select a substance by a number. The CAS number can be entered with or without hyphens. If you want to use previously created intermediate preparations, these can be selected via their description or the ChemGes preparation number. Product codes can also be used. So that ChemGes knows that this is neither a description or a CAS number, the entry must be completed with the F1 button or the corresponding button from the help menu must be clicked. Additionally, it is possible to find substances by EC number or index number, where, in order for the program to know what kind of number is meant, the input must be completed with the appropriate function key displayed in the help menu. If a raw material has not yet been created, it can be created directly from this input field by entering the CAS number and pressing Page Up. ChemGes requires very little information about a raw material to be able to use it as an ingredient of a preparation. First of all, this includes the description of this raw material. If the substance is not hazardous, then this information is already sufficient. If no CAS number is known for a new raw material, then leave the field empty. If you then press Page Up, the raw material will be created with an internal substitute number. To assign hazards to a substance, click into the area with the GHS classification. The easiest method is to enter the classification via the H phrases. Thus, click on the appropriate button and select the applicable H phrases. If the information is available, enter physical values. These values are not absolutely necessary, but can refine the results of the calculations in the preparation. You will notice that ChemGes immediately recalculates the GHS and transport classifications for each entry. Manually entered H phrases will not be overwritten. Press Ctrl Enter, then you can write a comment text directly into the formulation. If the sum of the components does not add up to 100%, then you can have it converted to 100% via a simple keystroke. You can also have the ingredients sorted according to percentages in descending order. However, this is done automatically in the SDS, and you do not have to do this on this screen.
When you have finished entering the formulation, press Enter and you will be taken to the next screen where the physical values are displayed. You will notice that most of them are displayed with a yellowish background. These color-coded values were determined from the ingredients, and this coloring indicates that you may want to check these values. Unfortunately, there are almost no mathematical formulae to reliably calculate physical values with the data available in ChemGes, therefore they can only be estimated. In most cases, depending on the percentages of the ingredients, the worst-case values of these ingredients are used. From the CAS numbers next to the displayed values you can see from which substances these values were determined. Hover the mouse over them and the full description of these ingredients will be displayed. Click on it and you can change the respective substance. If activated in the SDS settings or required by law, these substances will be displayed in the appropriate places in the SDS. If you have the opportunity to enter measured values, then this is definitely preferable.
After you have finished checking the physical data, press Enter and you will get to the basic screen. Here you can see, among other things, the classification that ChemGes has carried out for the whole world. Flags for individual countries indicate and classifications are only valid in certain parts of the world. In addition, the transport classification for road, rail, sea and air transport is output. Note that the preparation is the basis for all created forms. Therefore, if you want to change individual values such as physical data, transport classifications, or other data, do this in the preparation and not in the safety data sheet, unless you deliberately want to have differing information in the preparation and the safety data sheet. If you are only interested in these basic functions, you can stop this video now, but of course ChemGes is not limited to this basic information and offers a wealth of additional options. Normally only predefined GHS areas are displayed, but you can have less, more or also all covered GHS areas displayed on the screen at any time by pressing the corresponding buttons. These classifications are very reliable and it will only be necessary to change individual values in exceptional cases. These exceptional cases usually concern only preparations, where there have been chemical reactions, and where these chemical reactions have led to changes in the hazards. To reproduce the calculations used for the classification, click on the Quotients button. Select a type of hazard to see the calculated quotients, standard limits, and the substances involved. You can switch between different areas at any time to check which substances have different effects in other countries. The button, Substance Listings, provides an easy way to see which substances are present in which official lists for all types of substance listings worldwide. Hover the mouse over a line and you will immediately see which substances are included in a listing and which are not. ChemGes contains an extremely extensive library of international substance listings. After all, nearly 150 international substance listings are covered at the time this video was created. Especially if you use intermediate preparations, the breakdown of formulation can be extremely helpful as a source of information, as the formulations are broken down to the lowest level. There are different types of breakdowns that allow you to understand the structure and data of the ingredients in detail. Since UN numbers are not unique, you may want to change the UN number in some cases. To do this, click on the Transport button, click in the UN number field, and select the desired UN number from the selection that appears. Note that only UN numbers that match the rest of the classification are suggested. You can also force a different UN number, but this will almost certainly result in a forced misclassification. After changes, all automatically changed fields are displayed for a short time with a yellow background to draw attention to the respective changed areas. If you really want to make manual changes in the transport screen, ensure that the automatic transfer to the different transport types and the recalculation of the dependent other fields are activated so that all transport areas always fit together perfectly. Finally, you can enter the product codes used in your company as well as self-assigned flags or article groups. You can find explanations on the use of flags and article groups in the corresponding videos on our YouTube channel.
In the country-specific classification screen, a wide variety of local regulations are calculated automatically. Again, it should hardly ever be necessary to make manual changes there. The prerequisite is, of course, that the raw materials contain the correct information and that default values have been entered, as for example for the waste codes. From there, you can also immediately make the PCN notification to ECHA or the registration for the Swiss Federal Office of Health, or create the completed notification form for the German water hazard class. Various overviews allow you to control the relevant information of the raw materials and also to change them if necessary. If you change individual data in the raw materials, the associated calculations are immediately performed again, provided that the fields have not been locked. Locks are marked with a lock symbol, on which you only have to click to release the lock. This will result in an immediate recalculation of the value in question. Clearly, many of these calculations are dependent on basic settings. Wherever you see the gear icon, you can change the settings for determining the value in question, which also immediately affects the calculated results.
This is similar for the physical values. Since there are no methods to calculate physical data reliably, ChemGes offers a great number of options with which you can decide how to determine the approximate values. If you have not set physical values to be recalculated automatically, then you can trigger the recalculation by clicking on one of the displayed three-quarter circle arrows. If you are interested, you can display the values of all ingredients, change them immediately, and also have them recalculated. Optionally, you can also click on the recalculation of physical values and initiate the determination of several or all physical values there. The additional physical-chemical values button allows you to define data types that are not covered by the standard program and to output them in the SDS if desired.
Although this option is rarely used, formulations can also be treated like raw materials with impurities. Since you can define in the SDS settings from which percentage of an ingredient a product should automatically be treated as a raw material, the manual activation of this option will only be necessary in exceptional situations. This does not change anything in terms of classifications or the other calculated values, but only results in the creation of a safety data sheet for a raw material including Section 3.1. However, this SDS then also contains a table of hazardous substances. Without further selection, the substance with the highest percentage is used as the substance for which the SDS is prepared. The checkbox, Output on SDS controls whether the substance itself should be output in the hazardous substance table in Section 3.2. You can also give this preparation its own CAS number, which will then be displayed in the SDS instead of the CAS number of the main substance. Normally, the country determines how the percentages are to be output in the SDS. In certain cases, for example at the request of individual customers, it may be possible that you want to output the percentages differently. You can either use one of the predefined limit tables, use rounding options, or output the percentages exactly. However, you can also define your own output values for individual ingredients. Please use especially the last option rather sparingly, because it only leads to additional work to want to override everything that the program can do automatically anyway. It should also be considered in any case that values that have been manually overridden must always be kept up to date in the future, because no automatism can take effect anymore.
There are various settings for the classifications. In any case, we recommend that you always have the classification performed automatically under all circumstances. If it is at any time necessary to ensure that a classification does not change even if conditions change, for example because of labels that have already been printed or because of special customer requirements, then the entire preparation can be locked. However, this only affects the GHS classification in all its forms. Please note that there is a separate lock for transport. Many of our customers require different product codes and descriptions for their preparations. For this purpose, the maintenance of variants has been included, which is also explained in detail in a separate video on our YouTube channel. Additional translations can be entered by clicking on the translation icon or the corresponding button in the bottom rows. If this preparation is an intermediate for other preparations, you can have all other preparations searched for the occurrence of this intermediate. You can copy preparations completely or partially, or, if it is an intermediate, have it replaced in existing preparations. There is still lots of additional functionality for preparations. We suggest to look at the bottom row with the available function buttons and familiarize yourself with them. In addition, there are also various print programs, whereby data sheets in accordance with the cosmetics regulation may be of interest to you. Since the entry of preparations is probably the part of the program you will work with the most, please try to familiarize yourself with all the program help windows and function keys in order to work with this software in the most optimal and time-saving way.